Germany may be headed for longer, tougher coronavirus restrictions. Infections are high across the country and the vaccine rollout is still sluggish. Now, in response to the crisis, more state leaders are calling for a harder lockdown. One of them is Armin Laschet. He is the head of Germany's most populous state and the leader of Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservative Party. Now, until now, he had opposed stricter lockdown measures.
Armin Laschet during a visit to a vaccination centre. Last week, the approach of him and other state premiers to the pandemic took a broadside from the Chancellor. His salvo in return, a call for more talks and tougher measures. And that's why I think we need a bridge lockdown. We have to build the bridge to the point in time where a lot of people are vaccinated. I know that a lot of people are tired of the pandemic, but also that a lot are ready to go a step further. Laschet wants more people working from home and stricter curfews, but as few restrictions as possible for schools and kindergartens. He says he has allies, including the Chancellor, but not everyone is on board. I think a lot of what Mr Laschet says is unclear. A bridge lockdown that's temporary, with what measures? And that's supposed to go on until many people have been vaccinated. What does all that mean? I don't think Mr Laschet has thought things through, so I can't see any point in calling the state premiers back for talks earlier than planned. The problem is simply the time we've lost. For a month, we've known that the numbers are going up. It's clear that we need decisive measures now. The man next to Laschet is a leading German intensive care doctor, and he warns. For the next fortnight or so, we expect the number of infections will continue to grow. We'll have 5,000 or more COVID-19 patients in intensive care. The situation really is very dramatic. And the health minister says vaccinations will not break the third wave. Only about 10 million Germans have had their first jab so far.
Earlier, we talked to DW's chief international editor, Richard Walker. We asked him what changed between now and 3 weeks ago when Chancellor Angela Merkel announced a strict Easter lockdown before reversing that decision and apologising.
The reality here in Germany is not just about the pandemic, it's about the politics. And what we've been witnessing over these last couple of weeks is really a power struggle happening on two separate levels in the very heart of German politics. On the one hand, you have a kind of power struggle between the federal government, led by Angela Merkel, and the individual states, which all have their own leaders, like Armin Laschet in North Rhine Westphalia. Angela Merkel has generally been pushing for a tougher national line to deal with this third wave. The individual states all have different views, but what unites many of them is that they want to defend their own turf. It's up to us to decide what goes on here. Armin Laschet is at the centre of that power struggle and has even been openly bickering with his party colleague Angela Merkel. So that's the one power struggle. The other one is about who leads Angela Merkel's party into the national elections coming up this September. Angela Merkel has said that after 16 years in power, she's not going to stand again. Armin Laschet is the new leader of her party, but the CDU have been plunging in the polls amid the slow pace of the vaccination campaign, corruption scandals, and many other things. And he has a more popular rival emerging into the limelight, Markus Söder, who is the leader in the state of Bavaria. So all of this politics, all of these power struggles going on at the same time as this relentless third wave is moving up. Maybe it's no wonder that Germany is in such a muddle politically over what to do. But what's interesting is that the public don't seem to be in such a muddle. So, and this Armin Laschet referred to as well, that a majority of the public do seem open to taking a tougher line. They see those numbers, they see those people in intensive care. So the public seems to support this. It's partly that the politics has to catch up with that.
And we can now talk to Thomas Sparrow. He's DW's political correspondent. Good to see you, Thomas. So the head or the leader of Angela Merkel's Conservative CDU party, Armin Laschet, calling for a harder lockdown. What kind of support does he have and how likely is it that he will get his way?
Well, Armin Laschet and German Chancellor Angela Merkel haven't seen eye to eye in recent days. In fact, Angela Merkel openly criticised Laschet for his coronavirus management as head of the state of North Rhine Westphalia. And Laschet then actually pulled back and also criticised those comments by the German Chancellor. But when we look specifically at the need, or at least the desire for stricter measures here in Germany, that is something that Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, has stressed on various occasions. She has reportedly been stopped by regional leaders who want different kinds of measures. And that's the reason, Christine, why now there's all discussion about what path Germany should go in the next few weeks, whether there should be centralized measures that are applicable for the whole of the country, whether there's a need for another meeting between German federal and state leaders, a quicker meeting. The next one is planned for April the 12th. All these are issues that are being discussed. Now, obviously, Laschet's proposal, and we saw that in a piece, has been criticised by other state premiers who consider it too imprecise. So it'll be certainly interesting to see how the debate moves on in the next few days ahead of that very important meeting to decide whether Germany goes into a stricter lockdown or whether it maintains some of the policies that it has had until now.
Yeah, Thomas, as I was just saying, Germany has been in some form of lockdown for the last 6 months now. What is the general public sentiment towards the idea of a tougher and longer lockdown?
This is interesting, Christine, because actually a majority of Germans, according to a poll this month, view it favourably, the possibility of imposing stricter measures here in Germany. So that's something that obviously German politicians are very much aware of. But on the other hand, there is also a lot of criticism from Germans towards the way the government, both federally and regionally, have handled the coronavirus pandemic, about the fact that there is a lot of confusion. In fact, a majority of Germans have stressed that they've lost track of what measures are applicable where and when. So this is also something that politicians are very much aware of, and that's why pressure has grown and continues to grow on them to make a clear position on where Germany is going to be heading in the next few weeks.
All right, that's DW's political correspondent, Thomas Sparrow. Thank you, Thomas.
German leaders are yet again calling for tougher restrictions to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Some neighbouring countries have already taken those steps. In Poland, various businesses, including furniture and home improvement stores, beauty salons, cinemas, hotels and restaurants, are all closed until at least April the 9th. Meanwhile, those in Spain have to wear masks even outdoors, and they cannot currently travel outside their regions. Spanish authorities have also imposed a nighttime curfew nationwide. Now, here in Germany, some lawmakers are calling for a similar curfew. Some also say the country should follow France's example, which just introduced a strict nationwide lockdown last weekend. And here's what it looks like.
Shops all over France have been closed since the start of the weekend. Like here in Paris, strict rules were already in place in 19 of France's 101 départements. Now the whole country is heading the same way. The government will strictly curtail freedom of movement for the next 4 weeks. Journeys can't be longer than 10 kilometres. A curfew is in place from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. Masks are mandatory outside of the home, even if not everyone sticks to the rules. Many oppose the measures and worry what the lockdown will mean economically. I'm a photographer. We're talking about significant losses. Ad campaigns have stopped. The events sector, which is significant to us, is at zero. I know some people who've declared bankruptcy for their businesses, which had good earnings but have now stopped working. It's serious. In Germany, the city of Cologne has cordoned off places where crowds would normally gather, such as on the banks of the Rhine. Restaurants and hotels are closed. Business associations are raging against the closures. Instead, the Federation of German Industry wants to see what it calls creative solutions, like here in the small Saxon town of Augustusburg. Anyone who tested negative for the virus gets a QR code, allowing them to visit all restaurants and hotels for 3 days. But the government in Germany is considering the opposite, further tightening, just like in France.
And for more, I'm joined now by Gabriel Felbermayr. He's president of the Kiel Institute for the World Economy. Good morning to you. Good to have you with us. First of all, does Germany need a tighter lockdown? We've been in lockdown since October, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you're right, Monica. And therefore, I think the discussion that we're having is a little bit surprising, because it's not whether we have a lockdown or not. We are already in a situation where a lot of restrictions apply. Many sectors are closed completely. And now we're talking about things like a curfew, which is, for example, already in place in a city like Hamburg. We'll talk about delaying maybe certain steps of opening. But we have this 7-day incidence threshold of 100. Certain Bundesländer, certain states are below that, others are above it, and there are very precise consequences attached to this number. So I don't really see the need why we should open up a new discussion, in particular also because Easter has just gone through, and we have seen that numbers have actually gone down. Now, what that means is to be seen, and so I think it's better to wait rather than nervously start another discussion.
Now, of course, many industry associations are very nervous. They've been calling for a different strategy, creative solutions that allows businesses to open. Are they in denial of the pandemic?
No, I think not. If you look at the Saarland, for example, the smallest of the German states that is trying different models, it's not that they are opening up without conditions. There are a lot of restrictions that remain in place, and opening is tied to a very strict test regime. I think what we need is indeed new ways of containing the pandemic. It's not the question of opening up. It's a question of allowing more freedom under very controlled conditions. And I think the business is ready to implement the things that they have prepared over many months. We should try and be confident that companies are able to deal with the challenges ahead. I think they are.
Able to deal with the challenges that also, of course, includes able to deal with that current and various versions of the lockdown. How long do you think can German businesses, can the German economy actually continue with this back and forth?
I think we should not forget that it is only relatively small segments of the German economy that are locked down. Manufacturing, construction, many other sectors are actually moving quite well. It's concentrated in tourism, in social services. These are places where financial stress is growing, of course. Right. But the good news is that the aid program of the government is working better than it did before Christmas, let's say. And so I think it is technically possible to prolong the measures without ruining the substance of the German economy.
All right. A little bit of optimism there from Gabriel Felbermayr, the Kiel Institute for the World Economy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Monica.
Indian state leaders are calling for a wider vaccination rollout as the country faces a staggering surge in coronavirus cases. Nearly 97,000 new infections were reported on Tuesday, hovering near Monday's record high. Now, many hospitals are being overrun by patients. For example, in the worst affected state, Maharashtra, that's India's richest state and host to the commercial capital of Mumbai. Now, new restrictions, including a night curfew, have been announced. Now, so far, 165,000 people in the country have died from COVID-19. And I'm now joined by DW's Delhi Bureau Chief Amrita Chima. Good to see you. Amrita, what is driving the current surge of infections?
Hi, Christine. Yes, it came as quite a shock for people here because they felt they'd been easing their way out of the pandemic, and then we had these record high numbers at the weekend. What's driving it? It's very alarming for the medical fraternity, and they feel there's a host of new mutants and variations of the virus which have emerged, which are much more contagious. They are multiplying much faster, and they are transmitting 3 times the rate than in the first wave. So that is very worrying for them. And also, Christine, people had become complacent. They thought that the pandemic was behind them, but the virus is very, very much here. And people have been following corona-appropriate measures.
Right, and Amrita, this comes as, or perhaps has prompted state leaders to call on Prime Minister Narendra Modi to open up vaccinations to more of the adult population. How is that vaccination rollout going on?
Now, this is the world's largest vaccination drive, as India likes to see it, and they have expanded the vaccination program. Just last week, they allowed everyone over the age of 45 to take the jab. So, and there are calls that it should be open to everyone, and that is a possibility. That is likely it would happen in the future. And although, India is doing very well, when you look in terms of numbers of people vaccinated to India's population, the outcome is fairly modest. Less than 5% of the people in India have received the first vaccine, and less than 1% have received the second dose of the vaccine. So a long road ahead, Christine.
And in the meantime, Amrita, what kind of restrictions are in place to curb the spread of infections?
Now, there are various measures, some of them which you mentioned in the worst affected state of Maharashtra, with Mumbai as the commercial capital of the country. They have nighttime curfews. They're also implementing containment zones where there are infections and clusters of infections. They are trying to avoid big super spreader events like we saw the last few weeks, religious festivals. But I have to say, the ultimate responsibility lies with the people of the country. They have to follow measures which the government is encouraging them to follow, for example, wearing masks, social distancing, washing their hands, because if people themselves are not convinced about following these measures, it's a huge challenge for the government.
All right, that is DW's Delhi Bureau Chief, Amrita Chima. Thank you, Amrita. And now here's some more of the latest developments in the pandemic. New Zealand has announced that it will open a travel bubble with Australia on April 19th. It will allow quarantine-free travel between the neighbouring states. And starting next month, Singapore will accept visitors who use a mobile travel pass containing digital certificates for COVID-19 tests and vaccines. It is one of the first countries to adopt the initiative. And new data from Israel suggests that the vaccination of adults also protects unvaccinated people living around them. So far, more than half of the Israeli population has been inoculated.